us with a word of prayer? Thank you.
Dear Heavenly Father, we praise your holy name. Thank you. Guidance, Lord, very good. Knowledge, Father. Now bless us. Thank you for this day.
Amen. Thank you, John. So yeah, the Lord was trying to tell me something last week, Kathy, when the Lord told you to say something about the Greek festival, because that should have made me go, I skipped a lesson. But it didn't. The Lord was trying to tell me, but I wasn't listening, as is usually the case.
Appreciate you saying that, because I thought, oh, what did I miss? It's an email.
So we're gonna backtrack to Revelation chapters 4 and 5, and oops, sorry, squeaky, and to remind you where that happens in the book, right? John has just heard the letters, right? Heard the content of the letters, and is writing them down. And then after this, he says in chapter 4, verse 1, that he looked, and lo, in heaven an open door. And remember that the last letter calls for the believers to open the door. And then that reversal that we've talked about, that John is all about, these surprise twists and turns, sometimes even within the course of just a very few words. He looks and the door's already open, right? Jesus has opened the door and he is invited into heaven. Okay? And this is important because for a number of reasons. We need to keep this sort of in mind as we think about the plot line. There is a plot line here. It's not 7 separate seals being opened and then 7 separate sequential trumpets being blown, but there's a plot line of what God talks to John about and what John sees and experiences. So he's heard the letters. Now he enters into heavenly worship. And don't think too hard. What are the things that happen in this worship scene in heaven? Singing. Praise. Bowing down, right? What is it when we talk to God? Prayer, right? Yeah, exactly. And the focus of attention is right. God and the Lamb on the throne, right? And that beautiful twist, right? That we saw in the seals, right? He's all upset because there's nobody worthy to open the seals. Oh, don't worry, the Lion of the tribe of Judah is worthy to open the seals. And when he turns, does he see a lion? A lamb, and it's tattered. And that strange statement, standing as though slain, right? And we hear that and we go, well, yeah, that's what it says, but it makes no sense, right? Standing as though slain. That's really central for John. If you're trying to make sense out of this world based on worldly logic, it's not going to work. You're not going to get the truth of it because God is operating outside of worldly logic, right? So he is in heaven, and he sees this heavenly worship go on. And so what I want us to do today is follow John into heavenly worship. And in fact, the church has historically had ways to do that, especially through, I will use the term, the great churches, the the Gothic cathedrals, the stained glass windows, all these sorts of things, and doggone, that ain't gonna work. We got a problem. Let me see. No, we got a real problem. Okay. What I'll have to do, everybody shift down this way. Everybody, if you're sitting at that end, come join us. And there are three chairs here. So if you're at the farthest three, come on down.
Yes, I can see.
Okay, well, and I'm gonna make it bigger here. So y'all, we're having technical trouble here. Pretty major technical trouble, actually. I know that's a shock. Okay. Now, home audience.
Air is human to really foul up, takes a computer.
Isn't that the truth? Okay, home audience, tell me what you can see.
The Reams South Transept Rose window.
Okay, and you see some other things too, probably, right? Okay. And then
there are some stained glass windows off to the left,
yeah,
and a big one to the right.
Come on. Let me get the big screen going. Yeah, our TV is not wanting to work. So
now there's two.
Okay, hold on just a second. Close that just a second. Okay. What do you see now?
Still the two,
The
not
one
one big
window.
one.
Just the one. Okay. All right.
You know, you probably get the TV to work if you just log into the internet and then click on the.
Yeah, you used an operative word there. Just logged on to the internet. Yeah. Yeah. If you know how to do that fast, I defer to you. But I can't make that happen just.
Well, it's like the same TV I have at home, so that's what I was like.
Yeah. But that's coming. Well, anyway, I don't know. Yeah. Well, no, it needs to be fixed when we're not in this room. And the problem is it keeps getting unfixed because somebody's coming in here and doing stuff. Okay. Heavenly worship. We can set all this junk aside and focus on this, on holy, holy, holy. Right. So, y'all, we've seen a lot of stained glass windows. We're looking now at the South Transept rose window at the cathedral in Reims, France. And when I say a transept, if you think of a church that is shaped like a cross, the crossbars, each end of that is called a transept. And so this is a rose window that's in the South Transept. And I'm going to describe it for you. Y'all at home can see it better than those of us here in the room, because those of us here in the room are having to squint at the computer screen. So it is Christ enthroned. This is a 20th century window. There was a window installed originally in the 13th century. It was destroyed by a storm in the 15th century, and it was replaced. And then that window was destroyed in World War I. And so then this was the replacement in 1937, Christ enthroned, and bless their souls, they probably no sooner did they get it put up than they had to take it down. I don't know if you know that most of the great Gothic cathedrals in France actually dismantled their stained glass windows when World War II broke out, piece by piece, and stored them in caves down in the south of France. So they probably had to disassemble this, right after they got it built. So we're gonna so Christ is depicted in the center, and then he's surrounded by angels and by apostles. This is a close-up, and you can notice here that he is surrounded by the four living creatures, right? We hear about the four living creatures that are representative of all life inside creation. And for those in the room, I apologize. If you want to move closer, please do. There are seats here. There are seats here if you want to move closer to see better. The four creatures are angelic, and yet they look like, do you remember what they look like? A lion, an ox, a man, and an eagle, exactly. We're also the symbols of the four evangelists, right?
Which four evangelists?
So
Like horsemen?
no, the evangelists, the gospel writers, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, right?
Sorry.
So that's all right. That's all right.
Does it match either of them or just?
So usually Matthew is the man, usually John is the eagle, usually Luke is the ox, and usually Mark is the lion. I say usually, every now and then somebody transposes it, but probably 5% of the time, that's how they're depicted.
Mark, lion.
Yeah,
Luke,
yeah.
ox.
And I can wax poetic on that at another time.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. But you see here, this window invites you, we're going to back up. This window invites you to think of who is at the center of what you're doing in that space.
Mhm.
Who is at the center of what you're doing in that space?
Right.
Christ, exactly. And these all living things are focused on him and worshiping him. There are angels around him. There are representatives of the church around him, very much so like what we're seeing in the 4th and 5th chapters of Revelation. This is a little close-up here of that window, showing some angels that are in some of the outer portions, right? Angels, of course, central to, they're all over the place in Revelation. And if you look at these, again, these rose windows, you're going to see Christ surrounded by angels. We're going to see a lot of angels today. And we need to think about that and why they are depicted. Yes, Cedric.
This is something that poetic just came to my mind. Like I was watching a movie last night called Hammer about boxing. And thinking about this image of the circle, there was one character that kept telling everybody in the movie that, you know, God is love. But they didn't say that, but I'm saying God is love. And they kept saying that love is a circle. Yes. It has no corners. Yes.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that is absolutely part of the imagery of that oculus, that round center. Yes. And just the notion of eternity. It does not end.
Nowhere to hide. Like,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
And God is like a circle. There's no beginning and no end.
Yeah. So notice here, we've got these angels and we've got then, this is Matthew and this is Peter. So we have apostles depicted around, evocative of the elders and the angels that we meet in Revelation. So that this window is a way of doing what happens to John here, and that is inviting the worshiper to come into the presence of heavenly worship, where Christ is the focus. We're reminded where the angels and the saints who've gone before us are engaged in this worship. We're going to see this again and again and again. This is the southern rose window at Chartres. We've seen this before, and you don't even have to see it to know who is in the center. Christ, right? And then if you want to come closer, you will be able to see that at the four, I'll say sort of corners of the circle immediately around Jesus are the four living creatures. And then there are angels filling in the other spots, right? And then outside of that are elders from Israel, and outside of that are saints of the church.
You know what I find interesting? The lack of white clothing.
Right. You don't want white in stained glass windows. Right.
Correct.
Right. One of the reasons windows have two functions, right? One is to let light in and actually to keep the birds out. Right. But the light must not turn into glare. And if you have sheets and sheets and sheets and sheets of glass, you're going to have glare. So part of the point here is to get rid of the glare. It's functional. Yes, it's beautiful, but there's a functional aspect as well.
Just as a quick little aside, something's always interested me, our stained glass in the church, I don't know if you've noticed, where Jesus is being tempted by Satan. When the lights are in church at night and the light is coming through the windows, Satan is not illuminated. Everything else illuminates, but his face doesn't.
Yeah, it's done dark. Yeah,
Is
and
that
that's
done on
typical.
purpose?
That's typical. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'd never
yes.
noticed that.
It's usually a gray. I'm sorry?
How did they do it?
It's usually a gray face. Yeah. Yeah. And they put black pigment in the painting. Yeah.
So that was a deliberate.
So I'm sure, well, I have not looked at it because I haven't been here when it was not illuminated, but that is customary.
Okay.
That's, yeah, absolutely customary. Yeah. Yeah. You'll also often see, the same face used for Satan, as used for Judas, as used for any little demon that's portrayed. You'll often see the same face. Yeah. Yeah. So again, this window reminds the worshiper that you are invited into this beautiful space where there's beautiful light, where Christ is the center, where the angels are worshiping, and where the saints who've gone before us are worshiping. Now, let's move here. This is Christ Church Cathedral at Christ Church College in Oxford. Trivia information for the day. Christ Church Cathedral at Oxford, England, is the smallest cathedral in England. It's a tiny little cathedral, but it's got its little rose window. And you can see in that rose window, who's in the center? And can you see who surrounds him? Can you see what surrounds him?
It looks like these little pins up.
It's angels. Really, y'all can move closer if you'd like to see. You can move closer.
Oh, okay.
So they're angels. And I want you to start to notice something, that angels lend themselves to being used in stained glass window, because you notice that no matter which way the angel needs to face, you can adjust its wings to fill the space, right? Because they are flying creatures, they can be depicted in any position you need to depict them. And that's relevant in stained glass windows. And we're going to see why in a minute. You also want to put them up high, right? Nobody thinks of angels under the table, right? Angels are up high. Exactly. Yeah, there, amen. Amen. I like that. Yeah, that's a good movie. And here's a really good example. It is a really good example of using angels in diverse space. And I'm sorry that y'all are not moving up close, because you could see it better.
Okay, yeah, let's move up.
There you go. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So, so you can see here who's at the top in the rondel, in the round one. Who's that?
Jesus.
Jesus, right? And then then we have these lancets, which are the vertical portions of windows beneath, and there are saints worshiping Jesus there. And then there are layers of angels. There's an angel standing at the top of each lancet. There's an angel in each of the small rondels. And so those wings are symmetrical, right? Then there's a kneeling angel just above the round rondels on either side. And so those wings are bent to fit that odd little, almost wing-shaped area, right? And then each of the little petals, or 4 of the petals around Jesus, have an angel in it. And they can be bent into the position that they need to be in. And by the way, there are actually 7 lampstands also in this depiction. Those at home can see them very clearly, 1 on either side, and then the 5 little lit candles up above Jesus' head here. And here's a close-up so you can see a little bit better. Again, you can see the standing angels at the top of the lancets. You can see the round angels, the straight-on view angels in the small rondels. You can see the kneeling angels, and then you can see the angels in the little petals around Jesus. Now, a question. Aside from the fact that that angels can be bent into whatever position you need them to be bent into, aside from the fact that we would depict them up high because that's how we think of them, as being up there with God. According to Revelation, chapter 4 and 5, what are angels doing all the time in heaven?
Circling.
Yeah. And
like this kind of hovering.
And they are
singing.
Yes, because they are praising and worshiping, right? So there's this image that worship is going on continually in heaven. And the angels are very much so participants in that. That's what they're doing all the time. That's what the saints are doing all the time in heaven. And so this is sort of a stained glass depiction of this, right? Because even when you leave the church, this is still going on. What's depicted in this window is still going on.
So they're doing it all the time. They don't have a break.
Nope. No OSHA. No union.
No CWA.
Yeah. You don't get tired, right? Right. You're energized, right? You're energized. Amen. New body. All right. Protestants can get in on this act too. So this is a nativity window at a church here in Atlanta. And you can see up at the top, so I've depicted the whole window, and then I've blown up the top sections of the window, and you can see those angels up there at the top, and you can see that they can kind of bend to fit as they need to. And again, even when we leave the worship space, they are still there. And those people depicted in the windows are still there. Symbolically, metaphorically, still engaged in worship, even when we're not there. Remember that the great cathedrals of Europe, very typically, a window would be sponsored by a guild. So let's say the carpentry guild in that city sponsored a window. Well, that just screams, well, let's depict Joseph in his carpentry shop, right? And then at the bottom, we're going to show little carpenters working, right? So that those essentially become, the term is a votive, a presence of your prayers that remains present in the sanctuary even when you leave. So again, inviting the worshiper to think about this perpetual worship that goes on, and into which we enter when we ourselves come into the sanctuary to worship, just like John entering into heaven. Now, nobody gets this better than our Greek Orthodox brothers and sisters. It's integral to their tradition that worship that we do is simply us entering into, briefly, the worship that is going on all the time in heaven. So imagine, this is their imaginative world, that worship is going on all the time. It's going on all the time. Now it's going on. When we sleep, it's going on. When we're at work, it's going on. And we have this opportunity through worship in the sanctuary to enter into that worship. It is a foretaste of glory divine. And here's the shameless ad. I want you to go, if you possibly can, go this afternoon over to the Greek Orthodox Cathedral of the Annunciation. In Greek, it's Ecclesia Theotokos, the Church of the Mother of God, to see, if you can tour the sanctuary. We're going to go on a virtual tour, and you're going to see what I mean about you're being invited into this heavenly space. So here we're going in to the sanctuary. Gold, mosaics, light. It's stunning. It's breathtaking. The robes that the priests wear are beautiful. They're not meant to be gaudy. They are meant to evoke heaven, right? And the raiments that we will receive when we enter into heaven. You can see here there's an apse, a rounded area behind what's called the iconostasis, and that's this little wall of gilded doors between the congregation and the altar. Depicted in the apse is Mary, and you can just see over the cross, you can see Jesus' head with a little halo. So he's the baby Jesus sitting there. And you can see flanked by 2 angels who can bend and twist as needed to fit onto that rounded space. The doors themselves from left to right is the angel Gabriel, and then Gabriel coming to Mary to tell her that she is to be the mother of Jesus. Then Mary depicted holding Jesus, then the doors into the altar, then to our right of the doors that go into the altar is Jesus, and then John the Baptist, and then the Archangel Michael. That's a pretty typical way that Orthodox churches are going to lay out this, what's called the iconostasis. It's the door made out of big, tall icons. The one that I said has Gabriel making the Annunciation to Mary is the one that will vary from congregation to congregation. So for example, if you drove over to St. Elias Antiochian Orthodox Church that's on Ponce, there you're going to see Saint Elias depicted in that spot. So it'll be where the patron saint is depicted. But you can see this is stunning. And I think you can see their windows on either side. So we're going to step back and get a little bigger perspective because, you know, imagine we've walked in, right? This is what grabs your attention. And you're just kind of held there momentarily. Well, then you're going to step back and you're going to look at the bigger context. These mosaics are 20 feet tall and 11.5 feet wide. They are enormous. The one on the left, obviously the crucifixion. The one on the right is the resurrection. And you may be able to see Jesus reaching down and pulling up Abraham on one side and Adam on the other. This image of Christ pulling up out of the realm of the dead, those who have gone before. I think you can also, you get an appreciation. It's a rounded space. It's a round space, right? That's very traditional for Orthodox tradition. So now let's start walking around the space, and we're going to turn around and look back to what was the left. And we're going to see, again, these ginormous mosaics. We can see to the far right, we can see the front of the church again. Then we can see the mosaic of the crucifixion just to the left of that. Those who are here, when you go home and you can look at this on your own computer, it'll be bigger. And you'll be able to see then the transfiguration. And then the mosaic almost to the edge of the left is shoot, now I can't, because I can't see it, I can't remember. Oh, it's the baptism of our Lord, right? So we're surrounded by these scenes, these beautiful scenes. We're reminded of all these things that have gone before, these saints that have gone before. And I think you can also see there's a dome, right? So the dome, critical. Now we're lying on our back looking straight up at the dome. This is Christ depicted as the Pantocrator. Pantocrator in Greek means the ruler of all. You're universally going to see this in the dome of an Orthodox cathedral. By the way, cathedral doesn't mean big church. It means where a bishop resides. So physically, this space makes it very clear. Who's at the center? Christ enthroned, right? And he's above us, he's with us, he's the center of things. Everything in this space centers on Christ as the Pantocrator, the ruler of all. Yes, ma'am.
Over us.
Yes.
Over us.
Yes. And with us. Yeah, right? Because he's in all these images all around us too, right? Let's close up there. I forget how many hundreds of thousands of tiles are in this particular one.
And they said it's bigger than several football
fields.
Yes, I just
you
perceive it.
You lose perspective. It's so big. It's so big. the man who did this mosaic work actually started out Roman Catholic at the beginning of the project, and by the end of the project, you want to take a guess? He was a Greek Orthodox. He was, because he wanted to understand the art, the theology behind the art, and he was so moved by it that he felt that that's where God was calling him to be. Yeah. But again, this is just, it's stunning. You can't, I hope, start to view this just as wallpaper, right?
Yeah.
Right. So this is also at the Church of the Annunciation. This is the Bishop's Chapel. You will not be able to see this when you go today, but you can tour the sanctuary. There's sanctuary tours every half hour, and they will actually talk to you about the sanctuary, about the vestments, about the things they use in worship. But this is the Bishop's Chapel, and you can see the same layout. Christ in the dome as above us as the center of the worship space. You can see the iconostasis with the images that remind us of the life of Jesus, that remind us of angels who are constantly present, worshiping there in that space, even when we leave it. And I think you can see too, there's stained glass on the other side. It is a beautiful worship space for the bishop, for the staff, and for important visitors. Yes, sir.
So does the book of Revelation actually have a time frame, or no? Or is it just, because it feels like it's just set to the side to say, this is Christ, this is
a bookend.
Yeah, it's like on both. Yeah, it feels
Right,
like it's
right,
beginning and end.
Right.
Or and during.
Because who is Alpha and Omega?
Christ.
Right? So worship starts his vision, John's vision, and worship is going to close his vision. And all this stuff happens within it.
So like the existence of all this, thrones, doors opening, people being around praising and all that, like, is it possible that this could have happened before the phrase in the beginning?
Oh, well, absolutely.
Yeah.
Right, because heaven exists outside of time.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah, absolutely. Very good point. All right, let's move to another Orthodox cathedral. I want you to see that this is not unique to this facility. This is the Church of Theotokos Pamakaristos in Istanbul, Turkey. Again, Theotokos means the mother of God. And you can see who is at the top of the dome. Jesus. And then there are these sort of rays running up, and those are saints of the church being depicted as surrounding Christ, standing there, worshiping Christ all the time. Even when we're not there, when we enter in, we are invited to enter into the worship in which they are engaged all the time. This is at St. John the Evangelist Antiochian Cathedral church at a small town in Pennsylvania. And you can see here again, this is the Pantocrator. In fact, it even says in Greek, Ha Pantocrator, the ruler of all. And he's surrounded here by the 4 evangelists and by little, what little things? Angels, right? You can bend them into whatever you need them space to fill, right?
You know, as a comic, I'm always like, I don't want to touch that. But you know, everybody's like, no, I'll do my take on the same thing.
What you mean? Tell me what do you mean?
So like sometimes I hear somebody talk about something, like, I wanted to talk about that, but you've already talked about it. These artists are like, oh yeah. I'll just say it how I wanted to say it.
Exactly. There's this idea of a language that we speak. And we speak it in our liturgy, in our architecture, everything. And I would say our Orthodox brothers and sisters, they don't feel the need to be innovative. Yeah. Protestants, if you're a Protestant, let's say that you go and you have supper tonight or this week with a friend who's Methodist, and y'all start talking about church, and you're going to want to hear that the service was meaningful. Did you get a message out of it? Yeah, right. Right. Did you get a message? Like there's something new, right? Our Orthodox brothers and sisters take very seriously the verse in Timothy to pass on the tradition which you have received. this very firm notion that we're not innovators.
We're following.
We exactly, we follow and we transfer it to the next generation. And one of the ways we do that is this monumental architecture that speaks the same language to generation after generation after generation. Yep.
It's like there's value in both.
Of course. Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
It's,
Of course.
Rob said earlier, you know, just, we should talk about functional beauty.
The body has many members, right? Right.
Could be functional and look nice.
Yeah. This is the church of the Archbishopric of Arad in Romania. And big picture, we have that dome. We're going to close up in just a second. We've got this dome, a lot of light in it. You can see Jesus is surrounded by some things. So the bottom row are saints. And then there's angels in these little triangular spaces. That the point of the triangle is at the top. There are angels in the triangular spaces where the point is at the bottom. There are little angels in that space, and then Jesus in the center. So again, these angels that are worshiping and the saints that are worshiping all the time. And when we come into that space, we are invited to join that worship. Now, brothers and sisters can get in on this too, without having a Pantocrator. Having a depiction of Christ as Pantocrator is distinctly Orthodox. But this is the dome at St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican. And you'll usually see an open oculus in Roman architecture, this idea of light coming in because God is light, right? And surrounding that central oculus are angels and saints of the church. This is a close-up here. And at the bottom, again, there's saints. The next row up, angels. Next row up in those little round things, angels. Next row up in the little rectangular things, angels. Next row up, angels. Next row up, stars. Stars. So the heavens even surround God. That's a pretty wild concept, right? Oh, come on. Why are we not going? Come on. There we go. Now, you don't have to have that, the budget that St. Peter's had. This is a gem of a basilica in Asheville, North Carolina. Look at the stonework in that ceiling. It's stunning. Same guy who did the stonework at Duke did this. He's Roman Catholic. And when he was in North Carolina doing the Duke Chapel, he was worshiping there in Asheville at the Roman Catholic Church there, and asked if he could do something for them because they had a bunch of extra bricks from Duke. And they said, sure. And so they built this beautiful worship space. If you're ever in Asheville to see the fall leaves this fall, scoot over to the Basilica there in Asheville. It's open all the time. And again, your eyes are drawn up. And you are from a very different medium, brick. You are invited into this heavenly space. Right? Do you recognize that space?
Yeah.
Right? So there's no Pantocrator, there's no dome, there's no bricks in the ceiling. There are sadly no angels depicted at the top of the lancets. But it is a beautiful worship space that depicts the saints who are in worship in heaven all the time, even when we're down here. And that architecture is designed to invite us into heavenly worship, to draw us out of the problems of this world, because heaven knows this world is full of problems. And John is about to, as we know from Going Out of Order, to be very realistic about what the problems of this world are. But this is what's in heaven. And it's going on even in the face of everything that we're about to hear about. Even when we're down here facing war and famine and pestilence and persecution and our own apathy and our own desire to fit in with this world, heavenly worship is going on. And that's going to be the bookend for John's vision. It's going to begin with worship in heaven, and it's going to end with worship in heaven, because that's what's real. And I invite you, Atlanta has a rich, rich tapestry of worship spaces, all of which can invite you into heavenly worship. So, all right, therein endeth the lesson. I'm going to stop the screen share.
Very quickly.
Yes.
Remember back from years ago, you may notice the blue tiles up in the main part of the sanctuary. They were built first, and they're a lot more vivid blue than where you walk to your seats. So the side aisles, the same tiles are above you, but they're much paler. Apparently those were made after the fact, and the artisan that made the originals apparently passed or something like that. And so it's the same tile, but they're not nearly as brilliant blue. I always thought that was interesting.
Wonder if that's deliberate too. Yeah, I mean, you can't, because they couldn't match the dye.
That could be.
Yeah.
But anyhow, that was pointed out
a
long time ago.
Yeah.
And I thought that was just really interesting.
So here's your trivia challenge for going to worship today.
Okay.
Having spent a lot of time in there doing stuff over the last several years, one of the windows has words that are incoherent. See if you can find it. I have no idea whether it was done by the original artist, whether it was done by an accident during reconditioning, but Julia Hill pointed it out to me, and I said, I've looked at that window hundreds of times. I never noticed it. So it's not obvious to the congregation, or it wouldn't have been an urban legend, but it's real. And just see if you can find out which one it is.
Okay. Can we see it from the floor in the sanctuary?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
Give them a little more hint.
No.
Which side? Front to back?
No.
Yeah.
It's one of the side windows. It's not,
Okay.
it's not either of the two ends. I'll tell you that much. And it's not any of the small windows on the side. There's probably English majors in the group today. You'll read it and go, you're right.
Got it. Okay, that's our trivia for the day.
Yeah,
Any
it
questions?
doesn't detract. It's just an oddity.
No, and things like that are actually fun because it reminds you these were made by human hands. The calendar windows at Druid Hills Presbyterian Church were, it's supposed to be January, February, March, April, May, blah, blah, blah. The May and the June windows were put in backwards, so, and it wasn't until they had the windows refurbished in the 70s that they got them straightened out, and there's stuff like that. There's a bullet hole in one of the windows. Not here, but at Druid Hills, there's a bullet hole in one. But nobody sees it. So I hope everyone will go see that beautiful, beautiful church today while you have time, and eat some lamb and some salad with its guaranteed 6 grape tomatoes, 7 olives, 3 pepperoncinis, and a partridge. Right, exactly. Exactly. Let me tell you, we had the assembly line going. You have not worked with food prep until you have worked food prep with a bunch of Greeks. It was great fun. Great fun. Thank you. So it was great fun. So, all righty. Go and Cedric, did you want to say something?
Why were we watching Boy Meets Girl and Stranger Comes to Town?
Oh, no, I made the comment. There's only 2 movies. There are only 2 movies. There's Boy Meets Girl and Stranger Comes to Town, and Pale Rider is Stranger Comes to Town. Sometimes it's the stranger comes to town and meets the girl.
Mary Elizabeth, where did you say that you park for the
You park over at Century Center, and there are buses that leave, I think, every 15 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah. You can buy your tickets online. Yeah. And there's pastry sales, bread sales, you name it. Yeah. So enjoy. Opa, everybody. Opa. It's just woohoo.
You go to a Greek restaurant, they have a dish that they set on fire. Whenever they set it on fire,
Oh,
everybody
yeah.
goes.
Yeah. 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 Have a great week, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yeah, please do.